The interview. Let's just take a look at what some of you have had to say about the VAT bill and, of course, all these repercussions that it will bring to the consumers. Take a look.
To accept the explanation that this is a global problem. The global problems are there to be solved locally. Kenya never voted in a global government.
Yes. Ile maneno tunajaribu kusema hapa ni maneno ya njaa inaua watu, budget iteremuke chini. Sio hiyo, sio siasa. Hii ni maneno ya chakula. Chakula ime
Violation of the highest order. We informed the police at the in the right time. We gave them all the police stations along the way. We notified them.
It is a debate that will be coming on, judging from that statement from the Secretary of National Treasury yesterday in Parliament. Let's now bring in Zahid Rajan, a member of the Kenyans for Tax Justice campaign. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, what's your reaction to that decision or announcement by the Cabinet Secretary to reintroduce the VAT bill, which of course will raise the cost of living for Kenyans?
I think it's very unfortunate that within 2 months of a government that promised us justice, at least social justice, and the lowering of the cost of living in this country, that suddenly we are being, this bill has been introduced into Parliament. It was introduced last year in 2012. And then I think it was shot down by members, it ran out of time, and now it's being reintroduced. It really is very, very unfortunate, because all of a sudden, I think the wider picture is that there needs to be a rationalization of what VAT is supposed to be. VAT, is a tax that affects all of us, because it's unlike a income tax where you get tax based on how much you earn. VAT is what you pay at the supermarkets on everything. Now, all of a sudden, for goods that have been exempt, especially essential commodities like unga, milk, and the very essential foodstuff that ordinary 190, there is now a proposal to impose a 16% tax on it. This comes in the wake of us having been promised by the now Vice President that he would reduce the cost of unga, the cost of a packet of unga to 60 shillings. I don't know how that is ever going to happen, because suddenly we got a new tax. There seems to be absolutely no feedback from the executive as to what's going to happen. We've got this VAT bill. So we as a Tax Justice campaign have said no, that we do not accept this position, especially that there's an injustice in the sense that while they want to impose tax on essential goods and services, especially foodstuffs for the ordinary 190, multinationals and EPZs are being given tax-free havens. So it seems to be that now that the whole tax regime is based on on particularly the rich and the multinationals benefiting from a tax regime, and the ordinary 190 to suffer. And it is a potential recipe for social disaster.
Now, this administration says it seeks to raise additional revenue to fund those most of those campaign promises, that like free health care, free, of course, laptops for class 1 pupils in public schools. But would you say that Kenyans, the poorest of Kenyans, need to pay through their noses, through, of course, the VAT on those commodity goods, to just make this happen? Do you think there's a better way for the government to raise that revenue?
Completely. I think our approach would have been that first of all needs to be a rationalization of our taxation policy. By and large, I think our taxation policy has not been reviewed, in the sense that real estate and and the very big businesses seems to get the tax exemptions, while the ordinary person seems to have to pay. And I think there is we know as a fact that there is a huge loophole in the whole taxation system in Kenya. That the real scrutiny and the real oversight as far as collection of taxation is concerned has not been rationalized. It's not been thought through, and it's and by no means is there any aspect of social justice to it. So I mean, for example, I mean, if we talk about healthcare, yes, you can have healthcare. Let's look at what it means. Yes, you can waive money as far as maternal health is concerned, but how much emphasis is paid to say that that we really need to revamp the institutions as they stand now, instead of having these grandiose plans of building 20 hospitals in every county. I mean, that the institutions exist. services exist, just that they've broken down over the years due to mismanagement, and that is not being addressed at all. As far as the laptop situation is concerned, I'm afraid I have misgivings about it, because there are children who are sitting on stones. Their schools do not have roofs. There are very basic infrastructure problems which have not been addressed. And now you want to introduce laptop.
17 billion every year for 4 years.
Absolutely, and you're going to give a laptop to a standard 1 kid. What's going to happen? That person's going to dismantle it very quickly. There's probably going to be, the same laptops being sold on the open market. I think the whole rationalization that you could make a promise based on an election platform, and then not having thought it through, what does it mean? I mean, it is perfectly acceptable for me for the government to say, we want to introduce IT, we want to introduce laptop, but now we are sort of thinking and working with members of the IT industry and rationalizing the whole idea of how do you introduce education, And so I think it's a very worrying situation that, within 2 months of this, we're having no serious think tanking done. That have members of the community, especially the business community, have to sit down with the education sector and actually thought this through.
It's not the first time; it's the second time this bill is it's been reintroduced in Parliament. Last year it was it faced a lot of opposition. What is your organization, the Kenyans for Tax Justice Campaign, going to do about it this time?
Well, we've done various advocacy campaigns. We've run press heads in all the local dailies, explaining in very simple terms. We've done radio mentions as well, both in English and in Shang, explained to the audio person. But more importantly, we've taken petitions on matatus, on trains, and other public spheres to get the Wananchi to actually buy into this and actually sign petitions. Today, we are presenting a petition to the Treasury, which will probably be 5,000 plus people, in terms of expressing, an absolute abhorrence and saying no to Unga campaign, no to Unga tax.
Now, this bill, of course, when it is reintroduced in Parliament, if it goes through, it will also affect the cost of farm inputs like fertilizers and pesticides. What does this mean for the production of food in Kenya? And of course, does it mean that, again, the cost is being passed on to Kenyans?
I think so. I mean, already the agriculture sector is facing a massive crisis. The fertilizer has not arrived. The rainy season is over. We've got infrastructure which has not been developed, where people have produced and have not been able to get the produce to the markets because of bad infrastructure. Now, added to all that, you now want to put a tax on agricultural inputs. And I think the fact that this government needs to think through that, yes, you want to do all this grandiose plan, but why don't you start with the basics first, and sort out the very basics before you start actually doing this. And the fact that you've, made commitments for expenditures which can neither stand the test of rationalization nor any economic scrutiny doesn't make sense at all. I think it's completely unplaced. And I think it's unacceptable. Kenyans need to reject this the VAT bill in toto. We have lobbied to members of Parliament and the senators as well.
How is that going? I was just going.
That's very good. We've had very good feedback. Last night I was with a couple of senators and some MPs as well, and they made it absolutely clear that as far as their constituency is concerned, they will not accept that this bill to actually go through. We have also, because we now have an open presidency, we have written to the president himself. We've written on his Facebook as well, and we've told him how that we do not accept this, and we urge him to intervene for the sake of ordinary Kenyans. After all, we've been told this is a listening government, this is a government for the poor. We hope that they'll live up to their promises.
We are talking to Zahid Rajan of the Kenyans for Tax Justice Campaign on just what that VAT bill, which will be reintroduced in Parliament, means. And of course, the budget reading ceremony has always carried with it hopes for a better and more a better standard of living for Kenyans, a better affordable life for many Kenyans. This year's was no different, save for the fact that Parliament invited a couple living about 300 kilometers away from the capital, Nairobi, to witness the budget presentation. Abdi and his wife Zainab spoke to NTV's Brenda Wanga.
Abdi and his wife Zainab were perhaps the other most important strangers in Parliament, that is other than Henry Rotich, the Treasury Secretary. The couple from Isiolo was here courtesy of an invite from the chairman of the House Budget Committee, and the significance of this moment wasn't lost on the two former street people now turned small-scale entrepreneurs.
Kama street boy, nimefeel mimi ni Mkenya, mimi si street boy again. Na nimeona nimefeel vizuri sana na nimesikia raha sana pia kuwa katika hii national budget.
Hii ni mara yangu ya kwanza kufika hapa. Nafurahi sana.
The journey to Parliament for the two started weeks ago when the budget team visited the counties seeking views from Kenyans on what the budget should give priority to. Surviving on a budget of 100 shillings daily, the two had high expectations that the Cabinet Secretary's speech would bring about a change in their fortunes, and they say he didn't disappoint.
Na hii budget nimeelewa itakuja kubadilisha Kenya nzima, Kenya at large. Pia nami najua nitajibadilisha, lakini kama kutakuwa na yule mtu ambaye atafikisha hizo vitu mashinani na kufikishia jamii wale ambao kwa grassroots.
Haitoshelezi, lakini inanisaidia kidogo. Badala ya kuombaomba, inanisaidia kidogo.
Indeed, the Cabinet Secretary in the budget speech has set aside a sizable amount of money for the vulnerable groups in society, street families included. Abdi, who now runs a group that caters for the needs of these people in his hometown, hopes that the resources will trickle down to those in need.
Kama kutakuwa na yule mtu ambaye atafikisha hizo vitu mashinani na kufikishia jamii wale ambao kwa grassroots. Pesa zinatolewa mbeleni, hata tunasikia budget tunasoma annually, lakini wale ambao kwa grassroots haziwafikii.
We have expanded supports to those vulnerable persons. I think the challenge now is how to expand or to get the beneficiaries. Over the years, it has been a challenge identifying the beneficiaries.
Zainab and her husband carried the hopes and aspirations of many Kenyans who watched today's budget speech, and they will be keenly monitoring to see that the benefits promised today trickle down to them and many others like them across the country. Brenda Wanga, NTV, at Parliament Buildings in Nairobi.
We are talking about that VAT bill. We are talking to Zahid Rajan of the Kenyans for Tax Justice campaign. You can join the conversation via social media platforms on Twitter and Facebook. Tell us your views. Tell us what you think about that. So Zahid, just break it down to Kenyans who don't know about just what does it mean if it goes through. If it ever goes through, of course, the likes of you will be hoping it doesn't. What will it mean to the Kenyan?
I think first it means is that we have first fundamentally broken a constitutional law that Kenyans have a right to food, food and basic essentials, and I think that is very sad because we keep getting our constitution being violated, you know, over the last 2 years since we passed it. So I think one is the whole constitutional thing. But let me just say that, you know, in terms of its impact, what does it do? That while we've talked about food as well, it's going to impact very essential other items as well, which is not being talked about, which is electricity, kerosene, fertilizers, mosquito nets, and you know it'll affect the handicapped and the blind. Now it's going to affect a whole group of Kenyans, and I think it's going to create you know, a sense that really, as ordinary people in Kenya, you know, we have no rights, in the sense that, you know, tax seems to be you know, applied arbitrarily. It seems to favor the people who earn who earn a lot more. And let's look at it this way: that if you earn 100,000 shillings or you earn 10,000 shillings, you still pay the same amount of money for your unga and the milk and bread and eggs, etc. And if, you know, if anything is actually good to, if you look at the present cost of living, and you look at, you know, even transport and the fluctuation as far as the oil sector is concerned, we are in for a major crisis. And I think Kenyans need to realize that now, you know, and absolutely refuse to actually sign on to this bill.
When you say that poor Kenyans are paying so that the big rich Kenyans can have what they want, what do you mean by that?
Well, let's look at it this way, that who does this bill affect most? It affects the ordinary person, okay? But it is, the ordinary would, what does the ordinary person do on a day-to-day basis? Transport. So that's going to be is going to be affected. Your electricity price is going to be affected. Your cost of essential goods. So that means that if you're, for example, the statistics that for the ordinary person, 90, that out of the expenditure they spend on food, 90% of their expenditure is spent on essential items. That means that 90% of essential items on food is now going to be taxed. That means you're going to pay approximately 16 to 20% more. And when you start imposing this, the bill is so wide-ranging, and I find, quite honestly, I find it draconian. Because VAT is so unforgiving in the sense that, for example, let's take a packet of milk. A packet of milk, you get charged VAT for the design on the packet. You get VAT for the printing of it. And all that is being passed on. By the time it gets to the manufacturing stage, you're now imposing milk on tax on the product itself. So, you know, it is a very unfair tax that is going to cause major havoc as far as, you know, the social streaming is concerned. And I think I quite honestly feel that as far as Kenyan is concerned, the time has come to say no. And because if you look at, on the other hand, what happens as far as the people earning a lot of money is concerned, they should concentrate in terms of rationalizing and broadening the entire tax base. One of the conversations that we have had with people from the business community is that, has the government thought through, then instead of imposing, you know, a flat 16%, and I wouldn't be surprised if the 16% is actually increased. I think they haven't told us that yet, because I know we used to have 18%, they went to 16%, so I don't know. But as far as, you know, that is concerned, what happens? There have been proposals that we should, for example, say that we have the VAT tax brought down to maybe 6 to 8%, and then increase, you know, the base. So use economies of scale to raise a lot more money instead of using a very high scale VAT. To actually, you know, and it just doesn't make sense. The other thing is that we've got sectors like real estate, which is booming in this country. Okay, we've got the whole EPZ sector, you know, which get the tax havens made for goods which go all out of this country, you know, and the capital gains tax. I mean, there is so much, you know, the amount of transaction just in terms of property. And
that would raise a lot more money. The VAT bill will raise about 10 billion shillings.
Yes.
That, what you're talking about, will raise a lot more money for the government.
Absolutely, yes, and it will, and the people who can afford it should pay. I mean, these are luxury services that people are making money and are in business, and if they can, and if they can, you know, they have VAT on their particular services, which they can then of course claim back. Remember, all these business people are very clever. There's an input and output tax.
Yes.
So the way they do it is everything that they spend, you know, everything that they pay and everything that they spend, they actually, you know, have a pro rata against it and pay the net balance to the government. So for them, it doesn't really affect them, you know.
Finally, Zahid, this bill, you have pointed an accusing finger at the new administration, the Jubilee government.
Yes.
Now, where do you what goes wrong? Is it the planning? Where does the buck stop? Because the Jubilee manifesto promised Kenyans to lower the standards of living. This bill will raise the cost of living.
Completely, it's completely irrational. I mean, I don't understand. My honest opinion is that I think this government promised Kenyans that they'll do something about lowering the standard of living, increasing employment, making Kenya a more equitable place to actually live in. What we seem to be seeing is that we've, you know, within 2 months we've had a rash of expenditures. You know, the topmost being all the salaries of the MPs and the whole struggle that has gone on. So, you know, it is very nice that that we've got, you know, MPs earning 850,000 shillings. You know, we had a commission, you know, that has obviously invariably either been arm twisted or worked out to some compromise, you know, as far as salaries are concerned. And one doesn't understand that the whole election platform was based on a more socially just Kenya. And now within 3 months of it, you get all these various measures putting, which is making life so much harder for Kenyans. So it is really my appeal that we, for example, the Vice President promised that he would bring down unga, or at least made a public announcement the unga would come down to 60 shillings. What happened to that?
Mr. Zahid, in 20 seconds,
yes.
If, apart from your efforts to reach out to lobby Parliament to refuse or to oppose this bill,
yes,
how will you reach Kenyans to just let them know how this bill is draconian, as you call it?
Well, we have, like I said in the start, we have mobilized social media, we've used radio, we've used print, and our members have gone out to public transport where people are traveling every day in their thousands to let them know about the bill. We've got people who have signed petitions saying, so we've actually reached down as far as we can. We do appeal to other groups that are other groups and interested Kenyans, who actually agree with us to sort of contact us and see how we can work together to make sure that this bill doesn't see the light of day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great talking to you this morning.
Thank
We've been talking to Zahid Rajan of the Kenyans for Tax Justice campaign. We are talking about the VAT bill, which will be reintroduced in Parliament soon. We'll take a short break. AM Live continues shortly.